There comes a time in every empath's life when silence becomes louder than screams, when observation becomes sharper than confrontation, and when survival begins to look a lot like destruction, but not of others, of illusions. This story begins with one such empath named Lila. For most of her life, Lila had been the mirror, the one who held space for everyone else's pain, the vessel where others poured their grief, their confusion, their shadows. She absorbed it all with grace, not knowing it was slowly poisoning her. Lila thought love was sacrifice and boundaries were cruelty. She thought being a good person meant never saying no, never leaving someone in their darkness, never daring to put herself first. That's how she was raised. That's how society praised her, and that's how narcissists smelled her from miles away. They loved her open heart and her silent endurance. They admired how she could read a room and shrink herself so no one else would feel insecure. Lila was the kind of woman who gave everything and asked for nothing, the kind of soul who understood even when she was being torn apart. And that, ironically, made her the perfect prey for those who feared their own emptiness. But things don't stay quiet forever. Even the softest rose has thorns, and even the kindest heart can snap. Carl Jung once said, "Beware of unearned wisdom." But what he didn't say, perhaps because he knew the world wasn't ready, is that the most dangerous transformation is not the fall of a tyrant, but the awakening of a fed-up empath. Because when an empath breaks, something ancient awakens within them. Not rage, not revenge, but clarity. A clarity so sharp it cuts through every lie, every mask, every manipulation. It wasn't one event that woke Lila up. It was a slow burn, 1,000 little betrayals, 100 apologies never received. It was her sitting in rooms filled with people who only talked about themselves. It was her staying up all night, trying to fix relationships that weren't even real. It was the way narcissists made her question her own reality, gaslighted her emotions, and then blamed her for the storms they created. Eventually, the empath stopped asking, "Why did they do this to me?" and started asking, "Why did I allow it?" That's when everything changed. Because the most dangerous empath is not the one who cries. It's the one who stops crying and starts observing. It's the one who stops explaining and starts withdrawing. It's the one who stops healing others and begins healing themselves. Lila started reading, not just self-help books, but the works of Jung, of shadow work, of trauma psychology, and archetypes. She dove into the darkness, not to become it, but to understand it. She realized that every narcissist she ever attracted was a mirror of her unhealed inner child. They were the embodiment of a wound she was too scared to face. But no more. The fed-up empath doesn't seek closure from the narcissist anymore. They become the closure. The fed-up empath doesn't fight for the relationship. They fight for themselves. And in that shift, they become someone new. Not cold, but calculated. Not cruel, but firm. Not broken, but reborn. When the narcissist returned, as they always do, he found someone he didn't recognize. Lila didn't cry. She didn't argue. She didn't beg. She simply looked at him with a silence that screamed, "You no longer have access to me." That silence was more terrifying than any insult. Because narcissists don't fear hatred, they feed on it. What they fear is indifference. The moment an empath becomes indifferent, the game is over. That's when the roles reverse. The narcissist chases and the empath walks away. But this isn't about revenge. It's about reclamation. Carl Jung taught that until we make the unconscious conscious, it will rule our life and we will call it fate. Lila understood this now. Her compassion had once been unconscious. It was reactive, not conscious. It was survival, not sovereignty. But when she brought her shadows to light, she realized that true empathy does not mean abandoning yourself for others. It means holding space, but never at the cost of your own soul. So she began setting boundaries, not walls, but gates. Gates with locks and keys that only a few would ever hold. She spoke less and listened more, not to others, but to herself. She trusted her gut, honored her instincts, and followed her energy. If a room made her shrink, she left. If a person drained her, she cut them off, not with malice, but with maturity. People didn't recognize her anymore. They said she'd changed, that she was cold, that she was selfish, but she wasn't. She was just no longer willing to bleed. For those who wouldn't even offer a band-aid. The fed-up empath is a different breed. They are dangerous, not because they hurt others, but because they can no longer be manipulated. They are dangerous because they see through the masks, the sweet talk, the love bombing. They are dangerous because they walk away without looking back. They are dangerous because their love is no longer free. It's earned. And that kind of love, it terrifies narcissists. Lila now walked through the world with a kind of quiet confidence. She no longer over-explained, no longer tried to be understood. She knew who she was. She knew what she carried. And she knew her worth was not defined by her ability to endure pain. Her energy shifted. People felt it. Some respected it. Others tried to test it. But they all learned quickly that the days of the people-pleasing empath were over. This new version of her, the dangerous empath, wasn't here to save anyone. She was here to live fully, love wisely, and protect her peace at all costs. Jung believed that individuation was the path to wholeness. Lila was finally walking that path. She stopped seeing herself as a victim and started seeing herself as a vessel, not for pain but for power, not for trauma but for truth. She realized that she didn't have to become like the narcissist to survive them. She just had to stop abandoning herself to keep them comfortable. That one shift changed everything. Her relationships evolved. Some disappeared, some deepened, and some, like ghosts, kept knocking on the door she had locked. But she didn't answer. She didn't need to, because the empath who once needed closure no longer needed anything from them. She had given herself everything she once begged others for: validation, love, protection, and peace. And here's the real secret. The dangerous empath is not dangerous because they harm others. They are dangerous because they are no longer controllable. They no longer explain their soul to the blind. They no longer waste their magic on those who treat it like a trick. They no longer dilute their depth just to be digestible. They are whole. And wholeness is terrifying to those who feed on holes. Lila's story is not unique. It's the story of every empath who finally stops confusing love with martyrdom. It's the story of every heart that once bled freely and now beats fiercely. It's the story of reclaiming the self after years of spiritual amnesia. And it's a warning, not to the empath, but to the narcissist. Because when an empath wakes up, when they truly wake up, there's no turning back. Their silence becomes a shield, their clarity becomes a sword, and their presence becomes untouchable. Carl Jung once wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." That is the journey of the dangerous empath. And once you've walked it, you're not just healed. You're powerful. Not because you dominate others, but because you finally belong to yourself.